4 companies, data centers, GPU racks, cooling towers, $725 billion spent, and no single AI model leads the field. No clear king, no safe bet. The move smart businesses make instead. That's last. Here's the problem that money bought. Historic spending was supposed to crown a winner. Instead, it produced a fragmented leaderboard. Different models lead different tasks, and it changes by the month. For a business picking a vendor, that's paralysis. But the companies that stopped waiting for a king found a smarter play. It isn't bet on one giant. It's simpler and almost nobody's doing it. Start with the scale. 4 companies, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and Meta, are on track to spend a combined $725 billion on AI infrastructure this year, according to reporting on big tech capital expenditure. That's a 77% jump from $410 billion in 2025. Not incremental research and development, an infrastructure land grab. Look at Meta alone. It raised its 2026 capital expenditure guidance to as much as $125 to $145 billion, nearly double the $72.2 billion it spent in 2025. When that number landed, Meta's stock fell more than 6%. Investors flinched, and Mark Zuckerberg publicly defended the spend anyway. Read the signal here. Companies do not commit that kind of capital to catch up on a feature. They commit it to own the ground everyone else builds on, which raises the obvious question. If this much is being spent, someone must be winning, right? Not exactly. Here's where it gets strange. In May 2026, Anthropic overtook OpenAI as the world's most valuable AI startup. A $965 billion valuation after raising $65 billion in a Series H round, according to reporting on the raise. That beat OpenAI's $852 billion from its March fundraise. So Anthropic won right. Not so fast. Valuation and adoption are pulling apart. As of May 2026, OpenAI's ChatGPT still held about 79% of the global AI chatbot market, per StatCounter. With more than 900 million weekly active users and roughly $25 billion in annualized revenue. So the most valuable company isn't the most used. And the most used isn't the most valuable. When winning means one thing to investors and something else to actual users, the word stops meaning anything. There is no stable definition of the top. And it gets messier on the benchmarks. Now the core of it. On independent benchmarks, the lead rotates by task. As of July 2026, Claude Opus 4.7 tops SWE bench, verified for software engineering at 83.5%. GPT 5.4 Pro leads GPQA Diamond, PhD-level science, at 94.6%. Claude Fable 5 leads Simple Bench Common Sense Reasoning at 81.9%. And Google's Gemini 3 tops LM, Arena Human Preference low at 1501. 4 different leaders, 4 different jobs. There's a speed angle too. Google launched Gemini 3.5 Flash at I/O 2026, claiming up to 4 times faster output than competing frontier models. Sit with what that means. There is no universal winner. The best model depends entirely on what you're asking it to do. And that is exactly why the old advice, just pick the leader and standardize, backfires now. There is no single leader to pick, which is precisely the problem these next companies decided to solve. So here's move 1. Route each workload to the model that leads on that task type, instead of locking into one vendor. This works because the leaderboard rotates. So a routing layer hedges against downtime, price hikes, and a model quietly regressing after an update. Walmart's internal code puppy system does exactly this, dynamically switching between OpenAI, Claude, and Gemini based on cost, latency, and query type, per reporting on multi-model strategy. The catch is real. You're now maintaining abstraction layers across multiple vendor APIs, and a version update anywhere can break a workflow. First step, pick 2 tasks you run constantly and note which model benchmarks highest on each. Move 2 pairs with it. Use open-source models like DeepSeek V3 or Llama for high-volume, cost-sensitive work. DeepSeek V3 runs about 27 cents per million tokens via API, a fraction of frontier pricing. So bulk summarization never touches a $15 per million token model. The trade-off, Open weights still trail frontier models on complex multi-step reasoning. Move 3. Match the model tier to the stakes. Use mini and flash tiers for speed and volume. Gemini 3.5 Flash and its 4 times speed claim make it purpose-built for latency-sensitive pipelines. And reserve flagship tiers for high-stakes decisions where accuracy drives revenue. GPT-5 Mini runs about 25 cents per million tokens, roughly 4 cents per coding task. But here's the honest catch. GPT-5 Mini hits only about 60% on SWE Bench verified. So 4 in 10 coding tasks still fail or need human review. Cheap tiers fail unpredictably. First step, audit which of your tasks actually need a flagship and which are just volume. Move 4 for the regulated crowd, enterprise tiers. Gemini Enterprise, Claude Enterprise, and OpenAI Enterprise carry contractual data privacy and compliance guarantees. No training on your data, SOC 2 audit trails. That consumer tiers simply don't. For healthcare, finance, or legal work, that's non-negotiable. The trade-off: procurement security review runs 4 to 12 weeks, and some features stay waitlisted for smaller teams. Move 5 ties it together. Track independent benchmarks monthly. Model selection isn't a one-time decision, because the leaderboard rotated multiple times in the second quarter of 2026 alone. What to watch? SWE Bench for engineering, GPQA Diamond for science and analysis, LM Arena Alo for general preference, and Simple Bench for reasoning. Resources like LM Council and LLMstats.com publish monthly independent tests, designed by groups like Epic and Scale AI, that are harder to game than a company's own self-reported scores. Here's the discipline. A quick monthly review lets a team swap the default model inside their routing layer as rankings shift, without rebuilding the whole stack. The catch: even independent benchmarks can be gamed over time, and they don't always map to your real production data. So treat them as one signal, not gospel. First step: bookmark one benchmark site and put a recurring 30-minute review on the calendar. Rankings change, your process shouldn't have to. So circle back to where we started. About $725 billion spent, and the leaderboard still rotates by task. The race has no permanent winner. Here's the flip almost nobody makes. That instability is the opportunity. A company with a model-agnostic routing stack can always point work at whoever leads on their specific task this month. When the ranking changes, they change the default, not the whole system. The real winner isn't OpenAI, Anthropic, or Google. It's the business that treats model selection as a living strategy instead of a vendor marriage. Your exact first step: list your top 3 AI tasks, look up which model benchmarks highest on each right now, and build the thinnest possible switch between them. Even a simple config file that maps task to model. That's the whole move. You don't wait for a king. You root around the fact that there isn't one. You've got the defense, a way to stop waiting for a winner. The offense is building the actual routing stack, the abstraction layer, the fallbacks, the monitoring. That's the next video, and we break it down step by step. Subscribe if you want the monthly benchmark shifts as they happen. This is information, not financial or career advice. Do your own research before you commit budget.